Night has a way of swallowing the truth. It drapes itself over palaces, over kingdoms, over the bodies of kings and queens who believed their power could outlive the stars. But history has a cruel talent. It forgets the loudest kings and remembers the quietest mysteries. And among those mysteries, none are more haunting than the royal daughters who vanished without a whisper, leaving behind only rumors and shadows. Tonight, we begin with a girl born into the empire of ice and blood, a princess who carried not just jewels on her neck, but the weight of a collapsing dynasty on her shoulders. Her name was Anastasia Romanov, and her disappearance would become one of the most powerful obsessions the world has ever known. Imagine the winter of Russia, 1918. The Romanov Palace, once dripping with gold and chandeliers, has become a frozen cage. Soldiers march through hallways where kings once danced. And in one quiet room, a teenage princess presses her ear to the wall because outside, someone is whispering her name. Not lovingly, not kindly, but like a countdown. She knew she was marked. She knew the world outside the palace gates was collapsing into revolution. But she didn't know that the world would spend the next century searching for her ghost. Anastasia's final night is a story the world thinks it understands: bullets, chaos, the end of an empire. But when the soldiers left that dark basement in Ekaterinburg, not every body was accounted for. Not every life could be confirmed. The earth swallowed secrets that night, and when investigators returned months later, there were missing remains. That was all the spark the legend needed. Over the next decades, dozens of women came forward claiming to be Anastasia. Some were frauds. Some were delusional. But one woman in particular shook the world. A woman who called herself Anna Anderson. She knew the palace layout. She knew details even surviving Romanov relatives could not explain. And for a moment, the world believed the princess had escaped death itself. But the truth, if we can even call it that, was stranger. Anna Anderson died insisting she was Anastasia. DNA later disproved it. Case closed, right? Except, 2 of the original Romanov children's remains were never found. Even after modern excavation. Even after every inch of that Russian forest was dug and measured. 2 royal bodies still missing. 2 children erased. One of them could be her. But Anastasia is only the first door we open tonight. Because as her legend traveled across continents, another kingdom on the edge of the ocean was hiding its own missing daughter. This one not swallowed by war, but by destiny. Thousands of miles from Russia, across warm Pacific winds and the heavy scent of hibiscus, there lived a princess whose beauty and sorrow shaped an entire nation. Princess Kaʻiulani of Hawaii. The girl who grew up between rainforests and royal courts. A girl raised knowing her kingdom was fading. A girl whose every step echoed a dying culture. Kaʻiulani wasn't just a princess. She was the last hope of her monarchy. And yet she would vanish from history just as suddenly as Anastasia, but in a different way. Not through execution. Not through revolution. But through a death so mysterious, so abrupt, so unnatural, that people still whisper she didn't die at all. When the Americans overthrew the Hawaiian kingdom, Kaʻiulani became a symbol, a princess begging foreign powers for her people's future. She traveled across oceans, stood before politicians, newspapers, crowds. She became the voice of a lost throne. And then one day the voice stopped. She fell ill during a simple ride in the rain. The doctor said it was rheumatic fever. But her symptoms didn't match. Her collapse didn't match. Her disappearance didn't match. And here's the eerie part. Her family burned every document related to her final days. Every letter. Every medical file. Every record of her last hours. All gone. People say she was silenced. Others say she escaped. Hawaiians whisper that the spirits took her away so she wouldn't watch her kingdom die. A missing princess, a missing truth, a missing legacy. 2 royal daughters. 2 empires. 2 disappearances wrapped in silence. And yet, they are not alone. Because on the other side of the world, in the deserts of Arabia, another princess would vanish under even stranger circumstances. Without a war, without an illness, without even a witness. One moment she existed. The next, history swallowed her whole. History rarely loses people by accident. Kings make enemies. Queens inspire rebellions. Princes fall to ambition. But princesses disappear quietly. Their vanishings echo through time not with thunder, but with a whisper. And perhaps the most unsettling whisper comes from the burning sands of Arabia, where a royal daughter vanished so completely that even her own kingdom erased her name. The desert remembers everything, but people forget fast. Yet somewhere between the dunes of Oman and the stories carried by Bedouin traders, there remains a rumor of a princess, young, intelligent, politically dangerous, who became an invisible casualty of a power struggle. Some called her Princess Shajarat. Others insist that was never her real name. What they all agree on is simple: she existed, and then she didn't. Her disappearance began with a single night. A coup rippled through the palace like a sandstorm, fast, silent, merciless. Roads were blocked. Messengers intercepted. The guards who were loyal to the old order vanished by dawn. When the palace stabilized under new leadership, one person remained unaccounted for: the princess who had been next in line to negotiate treaties with neighboring tribes. Her chambers? Empty. Her jewels? Left behind. Her favorite horse? Still tied in the royal stables. There was no sign of struggle. No footprints. No blood. No body. Some say she fled with the help of loyalists, escaping into the vast, endless desert where no one could follow. Others whisper she was taken by the coup leaders and buried in a place where the sand itself keeps secrets. But the most chilling theory comes from the guards who survived that night. They claimed that, just hours before the coup, the princess locked herself inside the palace's oldest tower and wrote a letter that was never found. She was last seen staring out into the empty darkness, as if she knew the night would claim her. And to this day, the royal archives of Oman list her not as deceased, but simply missing. Location unknown. A princess swallowed not by history but by power. But just when you think the world couldn't craft a stranger disappearance, it does. Because far across Asia, in a land of palaces and jasmine-scented courtyards, a Mughal princess made her own vanishing act, this time by choice, and with the most astonishing disguise royal blood had ever worn. Imagine northern India, 16th century. The Mughal Empire at its height. Courts of musicians, poets, scholars. And within that world lived a princess named Zebunnisa, daughter of Emperor Aurangzeb, a girl sharper than any scholar in her father's court. Her poetry was forbidden. Her thoughts were dangerous. Her intelligence frightened the throne she belonged to. So one night she slipped out. Not as a princess. Not even as a woman. She vanished dressed as a wandering mystic. A royal daughter walking barefoot through villages where no one knew her name. For years there were sightings, each one stranger than the last. A veiled traveler debating philosophy with merchants. A poet whose words matched hers exactly. A female voice chanting prayers in a temple where women were never allowed. Every rumor pointed to her. None were confirmed. Aurangzeb searched for her. His armies tore through towns. His spies questioned entire caravans. But a royal woman walking among commoners was invisible. Unthinkable. Untraceable. When he finally gave up, he declared her dead. The problem was, no grave was ever made. No body was ever brought to the palace. No ceremony was held. She simply dissolved into the land, leaving behind poetry so haunting that readers still insist she hid messages about where she fled and why. Some say she escaped a father who feared her mind. Others say she pursued a freedom no empire could give her. But the truth remains lost, drifting somewhere between myth and rebellion. 3 princesses. 3 continents. 3 disappearances shaped by fear, politics, and fate. But our journey isn't over. Because the strangest lost princess of all didn't vanish in a coup, or in war, or in the shadows of rebellion. She vanished inside one of the most powerful empires on earth, Rome, and her disappearance would trigger a prophecy that terrified an emperor. Her name was Julia. Her story is darker than all the rest. Rome was not a city built on marble. It was built on fear. Fear of rebellion, fear of betrayal, fear of the blade hidden behind a smile. And nowhere did that fear burn brighter than in the heart of Emperor Augustus, the man who claimed to have brought peace to the empire, while quietly drowning his enemies in silence. But the greatest threat to Augustus wasn't a general marching on Rome. It wasn't a foreign king plotting invasion. It was his own daughter, Princess Julia, the girl born into the golden heartbeat of the empire. A girl raised under a grandfather who conquered nations, a father who rebuilt Rome, and tutors who taught her the language of philosophers and kings. She was intelligent, brilliant, even too brilliant for a world ruled by men terrified of brilliant women. Julia was loved by the Roman people. When she walked the streets, crowds whispered that she would have made a better ruler than half the emperors Rome had ever seen. That kind of admiration is dangerous, and Augustus felt that danger tightening around his throne like a vice. One night, Rome woke to a whisper that spread like wildfire. Julia is gone. No trial. No announcement. No funeral. Augustus declared, coldly, that his daughter had been exiled for immorality. But Rome was a city built on rumors, and the rumors were darker than the official story. Some said she was plotting to replace Augustus with a lover. Some said she discovered secrets from the imperial archives. Others claimed she was involved in a conspiracy that would have shattered the empire. And then there was the prophecy. It was said that a woman of the imperial bloodline would rise to bring the empire into a new age, an age in which Augustus's lineage would not survive. Augustus's advisors whispered that the prophecy pointed not to an enemy, but to Julia herself. She was too popular, too educated, too charismatic, too unpredictable. So Augustus erased her. The place he chose was Eri, Pandatiria, a small island prison in the Tyrrhenian Sea, nothing but rocks, storms, and silence. A place where prisoners went to vanish from the world's memory. But here is where the story twists. Officially, Julia died on that island after years of isolation. But centuries later, records emerged, from sailors, from local legends, from early Christian communities, claiming they saw a veiled woman leaving Pandatiria under heavy guard. A prisoner without a name. A woman hidden by Roman officials. A royal who should have been long dead. Some said she was taken to North Africa. Others to Greece. A few believed she joined a secret religious sect, one that Rome wanted silenced. To this day, no grave of Julia exists. No confirmed body. Only an empire-sized hole in history. And in the shadows of these mysteries, something becomes clear. These princesses, Anastasia, Kaʻiulani, Shajarat, Zebunnisa, Julia, are not separated by time or geography. They are connected by something far deeper. Power feared them. History buried them. Their disappearances were not tragedies. They were warnings. Every kingdom, every empire, every throne has secrets it cannot allow to surface. And too often those secrets were crowns. You've just heard the stories of 5 princesses who vanished. 5 names swallowed by silence. But the world holds more, far more. And some are darker than anything whispered in royal corridors. Because somewhere out there, another royal daughter vanished in a way that makes all the others look ordinary. A princess whose disappearance changed the fate of an entire religion, and triggered one of history's greatest mysteries. But that story belongs to the next episode of Throne Unknown. Just remember this. When a king dies, the world writes about it. When a princess disappears, the world forgets. And that is exactly why we're here.